If you see a truck, chances are that you can spot a decorated crown and garish portraits of flowers, celebrities, Islamic art, snowy Himalayan peaks, animals, amusing poetry, and much more.
I work hard to bring out the best project. This is a proud moment for Pakistan as well.
Sufi saints, spiritual vagabonds, the flying horse, the eagle, the peacock, the falcon, and imagined scenes of paradise are painted side by side popular political figures, military heroes, famous cricketers, showbiz personalities, F-16 jets and missiles.
The light bulbs are used for decorations and beautification of the truck. During the journey at night, they provide an exuberant view to the bystanders.
Truck art has continued to evolve, now more than ever. It continues to incorporate and fuse modern aesthetic elements and imagery with traditional, spiritual and folk ones.
The ancient city of Taxila is the heart of stonework in Pakistan. This art, which has been preserved and practiced for centuries, can be seen on many major landmarks of the country. Notably, the Pietra Dura work in the Lahore Fort's Sheesh Mahal. These stone products take days to complete and require immense precision and skill from the craftsmen. The final products are perfect for souvenirs, gifts and decoration pieces, each depicting the richness of Pakistani culture at its best. Camel skin and ivory craft are trademarks of Multan's handicraft repertoire. Camel skin is cleaned, dried and mounted onto molds which can be of any shape desired. Multicolored lacquer painting is then used to ornament the molds, which in the end bear a Mughal or Persian feel. Ivory is crafted into pens, chess sets, jewelry and other accessories such as keychains by the expert craftsman. Such detailed work, while being extravagant, is indeed a feat to achieve, and craftsmen of Multan produce beauty with their work which is worthy of global admiration. The enchanting arts and crafts of Pakistan.
Hello and welcome to Politics Today. I'm Farooq Pitafi. Today we are going to talk about politics but not of Pakistan. We are going to talk about politics of the US with 7 days remaining till the election day and election night. It is time to actually take stock and know what exactly is going on. Right now, because of the 2016 shocker, everybody is doubting the polls. But when you look at the polls, especially since in 2018, they went better and the predictions actually came through. Since then, many believe that the opinion polls are telling the truth. Right now, if you look at the real clear politics averages, at this moment, Joe Biden is leading by 7.9%, and that is nationally. When you look at other experts like 538 blog, and Nate Silver, there you see that 87% chances of Joseph Biden are there. And we are going to talk about all these matters and more. One, what to expect on the election night. Two, what to expect in the outcome, after the outcome, and how it is going to relate to this region as well. In order to help us understand these issues, we are joined by a very accomplished panel. We are in the studio with me is Air Vice Marshal retired Faiz Amir Saab, a defense analyst. He's going to help us understand what is going on in politics and geostrategically as well. Thank you very much, sir, for being part of the program. Michael Kugelman joins us on Skype from Washington, D.C., and he is a well-known security and political expert. Thank you very much, sir, for being part of the program as well. And Anila Ali, a Democratic U.S. election expert, also joins us. Thank you very much, Anila, for being part of the program as well. If Michael Kugelman is with us, I'm going to start with him. Michael, I want to understand what is your reading. Right, there seems to be some hitch regarding connection. We are going to go back to him later. Let me start with you, AVM Saab. Your take on the elections. First of all, who do you think is going to win?
Well, if you go by the polls, definitely they show a lead by Biden. But even Biden himself is not so much sure of the election outcome. And this is what he said in a 60 Minutes interview, that he would not be committing on his own win.
Okay.
So he was, because he thinks that Trump can pull out anything. That is what is being said.
You're talking about Leslie Stahl interview, out of which Trump actually walked out. And he says that he's still not going to commit if he's going to accept the election results.
So yes, it's a 60 Minutes interview, and even the best of the experts still say that Trump is an unpredictable candidate, and so are his voters.
Okay.
If he's able to pull out all his voters that polled for him last time, this is going to be a very close contest, because last time also, though he lost the popular vote, he won on the electoral college vote. So if his votes are safe and intact, and he has motivated them enough to come out, it's going to be a close call. And that's why, despite a continuous lead for the last so many weeks, none of the experts is ready to really commit that, other than that it's a close call.
Right.
So it remains a close
although
call.
at this moment, with 70 million, almost 70 million vote already cast, it is believed that it might not actually be that close. But I'm told that Michael Kugelman has joined us again. Michael, thank you very much. First, let me ask you, are you a voter? Do you vote?
Yes, I do vote. Thanks for asking.
May I know whether you are Republican or Democrat?
Well, that I'll keep to myself, but I think that it's very
important. Right. I was talking about registered voter, right? But regardless of that, let me ask you, I just wanted to table all the, biases that we might have. But let me ask you at this moment regarding the turnout so far and the way pollsters are actually commenting, and they are predicting or projecting that perhaps Biden easily wins. In Wisconsin, we have seen that Biden might be leading by 17%. What do you think of all these projections at this moment?
Well, it's true, as you suggest, that all of these projections suggest that Biden is going to win by a significant margin. He has significant leads in many states, including some of these key battleground states that include some states that have traditionally gone Republican. But I'm sure you've already mentioned this in your discussion that we have to be very careful about how much we trust in the polls, because we all know the lessons of 2016 when all of the polls suggested that Hillary Clinton was going to win big, and of course we know what happened. I will note that there's a very distinguished academic at American University here in Washington, D.C., whose name is Dr. Alan Lichtman. He has correctly predicted every presidential election since 1984. And he has said that Trump will lose. So I think that's significant there. But everything seems to suggest that Biden is in position to win. But as I think you mentioned before, winning the popular vote does not ensure you the presidency because of the electoral college situation.
Right. But regarding something else, because we have seen many states where Trump won in 2016, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, there he won by very small margins. Pennsylvania, 4,000 votes. Michigan, 10,000 votes. And now it seems that Biden is leading right now. Do you think that there is a possibility that this time pollsters have done their homework better?
Well, let's hope so. I hope that's the case, because you always want pollsters to do their homework and to learn from past mistakes. But I think it's also just a reflection of sentiment. I think it's quite clear that the political vulnerability of President Trump has really set in over the last few months as the pandemic has taken hold here. And I think that many astute observers had thought that he stood a very strong chance of being reelected until the pandemic set in. He had never really faced a true major crisis in his presidency until the pandemic came upon him. So I think that these pollsters are reporting what I think reflects actual sentiment, and that is that this dissatisfaction with President Trump has really grown significantly since March of this year.
Right. Anil Ali, once again, thank you very much for joining us. Let me ask you, although we see a lot of polling numbers at this moment, we understand that even NBC has moved Texas from Republican column to Democrat column. But despite that, when you look at the rallies on ground, Donald Trump keeps attracting a lot of huge crowds actually. And even yesterday when President Obama was campaigning in Florida, we didn't see that kind of numbers. How do you explain this? And of course, you can comment on what was said earlier.
Well, thank you for having me. Yes, well, I personally think that election is right now too close to call. Democrats, yes, they have the map on their side. It looks like there's a blue shift in many of the states like Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Arizona, Iowa, Ohio, North Carolina, Florida. We've got President Obama pitching to the voters. He's getting out in Florida. And so things are looking good. But I know that VP Biden does not want to take anything for granted. He went to Georgia and now he's going to Iowa for precisely that reason. No Democrat has won Georgia since 1992. So it's going to be amazing if we actually win it.
Right. But if you recall, Anila, if you recall what was happening back in 2016, many actually questioned at that time the decision of Hillary Clinton to go to states where there was hardly any chance. And later it turned out that it was waste of time. Georgia still is too close to call. But in the past also, we haven't seen that kind of a momentum there, right? So do you honestly think that these states like Texas, where no Democrat has won that state since 1976, and now Georgia, that hasn't been won since 1992, is there a serious chance of winning these states?
I do think so. I think there are very important Senate races that VP Biden is supporting over there. And you can see in Texas the lines of people waiting, queued out. waiting to vote. So I think that's a good strategy. Yes, it is. It's risky, and we know I was running when Hillary Clinton was running, and I thought there was more injustice when we trusted the polls. We need to wait till every vote is counted, especially in the swing states, the undecideds. We don't know how things are going to go. So going to these places, we might be able to shift it for the future. So I see this as an opportunity for Democrats to extend their base, to change. Look, Trump is not, he's not appealing to women, and women are going to be a very important part of the race. And that's what he's saying. He's saying, I love women.
And that there is still this disconnect between the polls and reality that we see on ground, the way people actually keep on campaigning for one candidate, not for the other. I mean, when you look at Texas and Georgia and umpteen other states, right? At this moment, it seems that Democrats have somehow, convinced themselves that they are in the play. But who is to say that the reluctant Trump voter will not show up on the election day and totally actually pulverize that impression?
If you look at the previous patterns of polling in US, Democrats, they prefer to poll through the ballot box, through the postal ballot. And the Republicans, they go on the polling day and they have polled more on the polling day, that is the election day. So definitely this time, COVID has actually exaggerated that trend, because of COVID, many more people, like you said, 70 million people have already voted, which is 50% more than the votes polled last time. So they voted earlier. So there is now what the dilemma here is that when the Republicans go and vote, and they're definitely going to vote because Mr. Trump keeps his vote bank. When they vote, and on the election night, when the election results are being announced, Republicans would have a lead on that night. But as the postal ballots come in coming weeks, probably the Democrats are going to gain lead on that. Now, here is the dilemma. The dilemma is that Mr. Trump has already made the postal ballots controversial. And he might not agree. He might declare his own victory on the night of the elections, and contest the votes that come later on, contest them in the court. And he has a 6-3 lead in the Supreme Court of United States.
He doesn't actually. Conservatives do.
So yeah,
not Trumpians, right?
I mean, I think of those 3, he has brought in 3 of the judges came in his time. So Republicans
and of the 3, Kavanaugh, Justice Kavanaugh actually observed, and that was astounding, a judgment regarding counting of the postal ballots, whether they should be counted beyond the election day, and that was troubling.
So there is a definite, and that is why Mr. Biden was apprehensive that Mr. Trump can make this election delegitimate.
So that actually happened in 2016 as well, when there was fear, and repeatedly, Michael Kugelman, I understand that you are about to, you have to go early, so I'm going to come back to you. I understand in 2016 also, Donald Trump refused to commit that he is going to accept the results. But in the end, usually when it comes to institutional prowess of electoral politics in the US, we have seen that a candidate who loses concedes. Do you think that if, and of course it is a hypothetical right now, but do you think that in case he loses, he is going to concede? And if he is not going to concede, what happens to the state of affairs?
Yeah, this is the big question that we're all thinking about and worrying about. So I think if the result is close, then there's a bigger chance that he will contest it. I think there's a very strong chance that there could be a scenario under which he would want to contest it. And this is why the recent nomination of the new Supreme Court justice is so significant, because if President Trump were to contest the result and the legal process plays out and it actually goes all the way to the Supreme Court, well, then obviously the the conservative majority would be more significant, more higher there, and perhaps more likely to favor Trump. I think that the thing to worry about is certainly that he could reject the result, but more so if he accepts the result, if he concedes defeat. What could happen between the time the election result is announced and January 20th, which is when the next president comes into office? I think that there are some concerns that he could try to do some things before he gets out in terms of issuing certain types of controversial executive orders or things like that. Because it's important to remember that there is a period of more than 2 months before the next president actually takes office. But indeed, there has been a lot of concern as to what would happen and what the implications would be for democratic institutions here in the U.S. if he were to reject the result and not accept something that's been put out there. Let's hope that cooler and more rational minds prevail.
Yeah, before I let you go, let me ask one last question regarding these groups that keep popping up, conspiracy theory groups, and first it was alt-right. Then we saw Boogaloo Boys and groups like that actually appeared, Proud Boys, Antifa, and now we keep on hearing about QAnon. Do you think that they are going to, even post-election, they are going to pose a serious security threat to the U.S. State, the people as well?
I think it certainly is a concern. I think one of the unfortunate consequences of the Trump presidency is that it has emboldened groups like the ones you mentioned that have been fringe groups for so long, but now they've sort of threatened to enter the mainstream. And certainly they could continue to be a concern. Now, if Trump loses the election, I think you could have a lot of anger within those groups that could come out. And many of these hardcore supporters of his, they're armed and they're happy to be armed. And many states in this country legally allow you to be armed in public and walk around with arms. So that's very concerning for sure. But I think the bottom line to keep in mind is that we had talked about how all the polls show that Biden's in a good place, Trump is losing support. You made the good point about how he continues to have huge numbers of people at his rallies. I think it's clear his rank and file has not gone away. I mean, it continues to be galvanized by him. They see him as this invincible superhero for getting the coronavirus and yet only having it for a few days and being a picture of health.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Super Trump. So that's not there. I think the issue, as you noted before, is whether some of these reluctant Trump voters, liberal Republicans, conservative Democrats, independents, those that have supported Bernie Sanders and don't like Biden, I think the question is what could happen there? Will these people actually vote or will they just sit it out? That could be a big factor in the outcome.
That's very important. Michael Kugelman, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you very much for your time. I have to briefly come back to you, EVM Saab, and then I'm going to welcome the fourth guest who joins us on Skype. Regarding law and order situation in the US, I mean, everybody keeps on talking, and I remember my own childhood days and early youth, and there used to be talk of what Boogaloo Boys now actually talk about, that there is a possibility of a civil war or some kind of, disruption. It never sort of happens. Do you think that this time there is a serious concern about security, given that President Trump keeps on pushing for poll watchers, some of whom might be armed on the election day?
Well, a lot would depend how President Trump reacts to the election results. He has a personality cult, a very large personality cult in the white Anglo-Saxons and people who are in their mid-30s to mid-50s. So he has a very large following in that. And there are reports in the press that both the minorities and the pro-Trump people have been holding guns and arms. So there are huge reports, and there have been even people have come out on the streets holding their weapons.
Right.
So there is a danger. But I think if Mr. Trump behaves more maturely as a president of the United States, because he would still be the president when the election results are announced, I think he can keep the dangers of a civil war away.
And regardless of what he keeps on saying, remember FBI actually worked really hard to uncover that conspiracy to kidnap the governor of Michigan. And that FBI is the feds. It is not state forces. So that would show that Trump actually is committed to the idea of maintaining law and order. Very quickly, I have to.
Eventually he would be. He would be, because he is the president of the United States. So he would not like. He would have to leave in any manner, in any way. So he would not like to leave a very bad legacy behind, where he left United States, hopefully not into a civil war.
Yeah. I don't know whether everybody is sure of that. Let me welcome our fourth guest, Bariza Umar, socio-cultural expert joins us from the US on Skype. Thank you very much, ma'am, for being part of the program. Bariza Umar Sahiba, with your permission, first I have to go to Anila Ali Sahiba, because she has been waiting for her turn for quite some time. Anila Sahiba, once again, since we are talking about state of affairs right now, how big a concern it is that after the elections are over, and if Donald Trump actually loses, there is going to be violence in the US?
Well, I can tell you, I have the largest Muslim women's organization in the United States, and we work with all faith communities. AMWEC is that organization that I head, and we have been afraid. We are afraid of what the consequences of what Trump has unleashed is going to be on us, faith communities. And we don't know if he doesn't win, and he's called the Proud Boys to come get us. We receive a lot of hate already, but there is something, and I want to add to that, is that President Trump
has he not since the first debate condemned or disavowed Proud Boys? He has, right?
No.
He has.
And he continues to use
on Hannity's show, he did actually condemn them.
I did not hear him condemn it and say that those are violent groups, and I condemn them. I want him to say that. As a leader of faith community in America, as a Muslim, as a Pakistani, it's very important for us to hear that from him. But what he's actually done is he's given them an okay to say whatever they want about any group that is not white conservative. And that is dangerous for the democracy going forward in America, for a pluralistic America that embraces everybody. And you mentioned the FBI. FBI has said openly, and he's threatened FBI many times, and they've said openly that the biggest threat to Homeland America is these groups that have come out that are going, we think that they might just, if Trump loses, they might just be civil war in certain states. So we are embracing, we're praying.
Let us hope it doesn't come to that kind of a state, but let me once again welcome Bariza Umar Sahiba, and let me ask her. Last time, ma'am, you were on this show, I asked you about this moment, George Floyd moment, that America was having at that time, and it seemed that it is going to actually propel Joe Biden to victory. Do you think that America still is there going through that moment? Because something that was astounding that we saw day before yesterday, a black man was shot dead in Pennsylvania. And once again, every time there is some kind of competition going on in a state, first somebody is shot down, and then there are protests followed by looting as well. And that seems to actually plays to one side's base, not the others. Your take on George Floyd moment?
Well, police brutality is still an issue, and state-sponsored violence is still an issue. We continue this fast murder is not new. We've been continuing to see almost on a weekly basis more black men being killed at the hands of the state. But we have also not seen these protests completely die away. They are still going on in a lot of cities. They haven't gone anywhere. As for it going into rioting and looting, that works very well as a way to change the conversation for one particular side, because you can't have a conversation. You can change the conversation from being one of murders of Black and brown people to one of rioting and violence, without that being what is actually the core of what's happening. That happens whenever there is unrest, any kind of unrest. So I will say that this hasn't gone anywhere. I do think that the majority of people of color who have already voted, this is very much at the top of their minds. The people of color who will still continue to vote until election day, this is still very much something that is on their minds and the minds of, allies.
Since you have used a term, people of color, let us actually look at the anatomy of that as well. We understand that from polls, of course, that the black voters might actually, in a big number, vote for Joseph Biden. We know that there are other groups that might be voting. Even white community is also a big number. But when it comes to Hispanics or Latino community, it seems that Joe Biden still has a deficit, despite the fact that during Donald Trump's time, there were many concerns. For example, that family separation issue that primarily targeted Latino, voters, Latino immigrants. Do tell us why do you think there is any deficit on this side?
I do think that there are at least 2 points to be considered. The first point I would say, and this is for a lot of his supporters in general, is the issue of being anti-abortion. And I think that generally the Republican Party has managed to keep a lot of Hispanic voters because of their deeply held views about abortion and it being their wanting to have it Roe v. Wade to be overturned. The other issue I would like to actually connect it to the Muslim community a little bit, because the anti-immigration stuff for a lot of Hispanics who have voted Republican even in the past, they are the more affluent. They are also legal. They came through to the United States using the legal means that were available to them in the past before rules were made much more stringent and immigration had become more difficult. So you see that a lot with the Cuban community in Florida. Recently, a poll came out with about the Muslim community in the United States and how almost 30% of the Muslim community, Trump has an almost 30% approval rating in the Muslim community all of a sudden.
Right.
As compared to under 20% in 2016. And some of that is the law and order issue. And some of that is also the anti-immigration, where you have a lot of affluent Muslims who came from more professional backgrounds who have made it economically over here, and they don't like this whole backdoor coming into the United States.
Right.
So
and,
I think
and
these
compromise the privilege that a legal immigrant might have. That is a good point. Let me go back to AVM Saab. Since we have talked about all the communities, more or less, right? Let me ask you about the South Asian community. Given that one candidate has a running mate who is partially from South Asia, I thought that the South Asian community will be really united, especially the Indians. But that doesn't seem to be the case. In Texas, for example, they seem to be divided evenly.
Yes, I think once again there are a number of factors that when you talk of South Asian community, they are also first generation, third generation South Asians over there,
right.
And they look at their local domestic issues more than what probably they would look at the South Asian policies of these candidates.
Right.
So I think COVID has hit everybody very hard. And since Mr. Trump has been blamed to not be enough empathetic to the worries and the sufferings of the COVID people, and there are a lot of old age citizens that have been that have really switched away from Trump to Mr. Biden's side, to Democratic side, because of his handling of the COVID. Then there is an issue of the H-1 visas. That
H-1B visas.
H-1B visas that has really hurt the Indian community a lot more. I think that has also caused some shifting of loyalties from the Republican Mr. Trump to the other side.
No, I understand why anybody would go and vote for Democrats, right? Traditionally, South Asians have voted more for Democrats rather than Republicans. Explain to me, why are there so many people, especially aligned with BJP, that is India's ruling party, that actually want to vote for Donald Trump?
Well, that's the, if you talk about the Indians in India,
Yeah.
then that's the Howdy Moody,
Okay.
that factor.
Okay.
That the personal rapport between the two leaders and the
Right.
similarities in their personalities and similarities in their approaches. I think that is what, and
Why
actually,
hang on.
Okay.
You just pushed a button. You said similarities between their personalities. Donald Trump is educated, well educated. Modi has hardly, he cannot justify his degrees. Modi is accused of killing more than 2,000 people. Donald Trump has never been accused of killing a single human being. So
Yes,
you cannot
I mean,
compare the two.
No, you can't compare them in only that aspect, but both are radical nationalists. And so is Mr. Modi.
Okay.
And look at the way his persona resembles Trump's persona. His politics resembles Trump's politics.
One is very successful. The other one is basically a street goon.
No,
who was
I
propelled
think
to power.
let me give credit to Mr. Modi that he has risen from ranks to become the prime minister. So he has seen all those steps, whereas Mr. Trump has just walked in from the horizontally. He has walked into the presidential elections last time, where Mr. Modi has struggled all his life to rise into those. So he
Yeah,
is more.
that struggle also included killing people.
Yes, that
Yeah.
definitely that included, but that does not take away anything from his struggle political struggle that he's gone through.
Anil Ali, let us talk about illegal immigrants because that used to be a big, huge issue, especially in 2016. Remember that wall that had to be built, and after, because of grift regarding which Steve Bannon got caught actually. Do you think that even in this election, illegal immigration is a big issue, or it is basically taken over by COVID-related miseries?
Well, I can tell you from the South Asian point of view and then the Latino point of view. Latinos are also very diverse, like the South Asians are, we're Pakistanis, we're Indians, we're Bangladeshis, and so are the Latinos. They are Cubans, and then there are South Americans and Chileans and so on. So the South Asian community has, I've been getting a lot of calls from my friends, a lot of the Indians that were going to vote for Biden have moved towards Trump. Why is that happening? Well, Secretary Pompeo has just visited India, and I hear they're promising opening up the H-1 visas, and they're signing deals. So that's a really good way to get the Indians to vote for Trump. The South Asians don't vote on immigration as much. They don't vote on social issues either. They're not very pushed about abortion issues, but yes, they are pushed about foreign policy pertaining to their nations where they come from, their adopted homelands. So that's like the number one. When I talk to Pakistanis, I talk to Indians, they say, okay, well, how will Pakistan bend? The Republicans, like has been said, have always been traditionally closer. Well, tide has shifted, and I think Biden is the one who's talked about Kashmir.
Right. I actually asked you about immigrants because you are from California, and I understand that in California itself, the demographics have shifted dramatically over past 2 or 3 decades, where the white population used to be 90–80%, and now it is in early 60s. So there must be some concern about illegal immigrants there even now. And can it actually help Trump actually move, California slightly? Because we know that the kind of votes that Hillary got from California, Biden is not getting that kind of polls in California.
Well, you're absolutely right. When I talked to my Latino friends, they said, Biden's campaign is not talking enough about that issue. Look at the kids that are in jails at the borders. I've been to those areas. I've seen the kids. I've done, as a Muslim, I've done a lot of work to advocate for those communities. But I think in this election, COVID has taken over that very important issue. California is not going to be Republican anytime soon. You can forget that, because it has gone too far to the left as well. But yes, there is a chance that a lot of the red states in the Midwest can be blue if we can get the blacks out to vote. Traditionally, that's the silent majority that doesn't vote. And that's what VP Biden is trying to do by going out to Atlanta, Georgia, getting out the vote, which is going to change things for him and the Democratic Party.
Right. Bariza Umar Sahiba, at this moment when we are looking at the polls, how confident are you? Because you joined us late in the program. Let me ask you very quickly, what do you think of the opinion polls? Do you think that they are more accurate this time? Or once again, we might be in for some kind of shock?
I think that I 100% think that he is going to win the popular vote. There's no doubt about that. Now, with the long game the Republican Party has been playing with stacking the courts with judges and with this almost certainly going into the courts, there are flashbacks to the 2000 election where the Florida vote count went to the courts. And so if it does go to the courts, if the Electoral College is maneuvered one way or another, this might be more of an issue. But 100% the popular vote is going to go to...
But we are not actually talking about popular vote, right? Especially given that there are certain outlier polls like Rasmussen, which actually show us that the national gap might be only 3%. And frankly, if you start counting, Hillary Clinton actually got 2 to 3% from California alone. So that would mean that perhaps they could actually win popular vote and still lose. But regarding the accuracy of state polls, because I understand that there are three layers of polls. One is national, where Biden seems to be doing rather well. Then there are state polls where you have more tight fights. And then the local polls, which actually point to a blue wave. And there might be this gargantuan wave that might be coming the blue side. Please.
I do think that the Democrats have learned from the lessons from 2000, where you have to win by a margin that is uncontestable. And so I agree with Anila. Going into these states that have last time voted red, like Georgia, I think it really matters, because the more uncontestable the margin is, the larger that margin is, and the more votes that it's incontrovertible evidence that the election cannot go any other way. I think that is, I hope that is where this is going. So I still think that we are going to have a President Biden next year.
Right. We still have to wait and see. I'm told that we have to actually start closing the program. Very quickly, AVM Saab, who do you think is going to win? And you can add your conclusion very quickly.
I think I would echo Fareed Zakaria's words, where he said that in 2016 he thought he wished that the American people will come out and vote and they deserve better. Yeah. And he says he was proven wrong. Okay. This time again he thinks and he praised that the American people, they vote correctly and they deserve better. Yeah. So I think Mr. Trump has been a divisive president. He has been a troublesome president. I think the world needs better. In every election, all nations are at a crossroad. Yeah. But in this particular case, in the US elections, the world is at a crossroad. Right. So what kind of the foreign policies? I'm more concerned about foreign policy issues that Mr. Biden would pursue and Mr. Trump will pursue. I think they're more concerning us, and I'm just pray the world deserves better.
Right, but many will argue that for that, actually, that in truth, America always had these divisions. The only thing that Trump did was force media to focus on those divides. But I'm told, sir, that we have run out of time. Very quickly, Anila Ali, your take on who's going to win and any concluding remarks that you want to add here.
I just want to say that President Trump violated the sanctity of the mail-in ballot. So really, we as Democrats cannot take it for granted, and we have to get the vote out. It doesn't matter which state right now, the vote counts. And we won't know who wins until that last mail-in ballot is counted in the battleground states. So my wishes are with the Biden campaign, and I hope he wins, but it's too close to call.
Last mail-in ballot or postal ballot? Because there is apparently a difference. But Anila Ali Sahaba, thank you very much for being part of the program. Bariza Umar Sahaba, your take. Last time you said, if I recall correctly, that Biden is going to win. So I'm going to ask you to give us your conclusion.
I still think that we are going to be seeing a President Biden. I don't know how that is going to happen, whether we are going to be going in the courts for a fight and what that might look like with the courts stacked the way that they are right now. But I think we are going to see a President Biden.
Right. On that note, I'm told, I mean, there's a consensus among my participants. But let me thank you, Bariza Umar, Anila Ali, thank you very much for your time as well. Both of you actually found time. Let me again thank Kugelman, Michael Kugelman, who joined us earlier. AVM retired. Faiz Amir Sahab was with me. Thank you very much, sir, for being part of the program. Because there are many aspects of this election. And remember, once you have been shaken by 2016 election results, you need some time to actually recover from that kind of shock. And perhaps that's why everybody keeps on challenging the polls. But there are two aspects which are quite interesting that might actually point to a Biden victory. One, regarding desperation of Republicans. They were very desperate in 2016 because they thought that there are 4 openings on in Supreme Court that are going to arise. Out of those 4, 3 have been filled. So perhaps Republicans on the whole are not that desperate. So, secondly, Hunter Biden's recent revelations that came and they have been attributed to Russian or foreign meddling. Again, there too, it seems that it is not quite Hillary Clinton's emails kind of scandal or Comey letter kind of shocker. So that also shows that perhaps the foreign involvement or meddling might not be that desperate either. So if that happens and if these opinion polls hold, you might see President Biden at the end of the election night. But on the other side, of course, remember you are talking about a very surprising candidate called Donald Trump. So you'd never know. This was today's program. Thank you very much for watching. Take care.